with us today. So let me introduce us. So my name is Faina, and I'm actually a sporting epidemiologist, and I am a part of this group of the Eat Positive group of Zurich. So we are all fans of you. So we are gathered here today to listen and to to know more what you have to say to us. And I see you actually on your treadmill.
Of course.
That's a wonderful way to give interviews.
I'm hoping to inspire people.
Thank you. Again, a little bit more about us, so you know who we are. So actually, if you go to the previous slide.
Yeah.
So here, as you see, we are a group of international people here, and as you can see, we are mostly vegan. And then we also have a bit of the other diet preferences, but we are all vegan curious, so that's for sure. And we just now watched your video, which is Food as Medicine, and you can see people actually what people think about it, like what new things. So we are.
Neat.
Yeah, so we are all prepped, and then we have been collecting questions for a while, and we have the whole list of questions, and then questions
Great.
coming in. So we are going to jump right in.
Let's do it.
So our first question is, so after watching the video, of course, we are understanding that their plant-based diet is actually, let's say, the best diet, right? And then, but the question is now, do you think that it's actually one diet fits all solution? Because we know that our well-being is actually defined by our lifestyle and genetics and microbiome. And then do you think that actually there might be people out there who might not be feeling good on a vegan diet or plant-based diet?
Well, so, I mean, one's microbiome, the critical factor is diet, particularly high fiber foods or prebiotic foods, including resistant starch. And so certainly from a microbiome standpoint, there's nothing better than plant-based diet. But there's very little fundamental differences between people in terms of their nutritional needs. Some people certainly have allergies. Some people are lactose intolerant. And so there's small differences and maybe little tweaks here and there, but the fundamentals remain the same. It's really the healthiest diet for the human species. It's like taking a mountain gorilla or something, being like, do they all really like eating leaves? I mean, maybe a couple of them, want to eat roadkill or something. No, their physiology, their fundamental biology is such that that's the healthiest diet. In fact, our very physiology for the last 20 million years since we last split from our common great ape ancestor, for at least the first 90% of it, we were like the rest of the great apes, which is almost exclusively plant-based until we started using tools just about 2 million years ago.
But nonetheless, this is the argument the carnivores use, that we actually, all our evolution was based on the meat eating, right?
Only for the last 2 million years. Did we have any meat eating, except maybe some scavenging? But that's just a tiny fraction. That's just the last 10%. The first 90% of our evolution as hominoid species was, all of our biology, our biochemistry, was our digestive system evolved in the context of an almost completely plant-based diet. And it was only just in the last 2 million years did meat into the picture when we started using tools. And then refined grains really only started for the last 100 or so years, and grains in general just about 10,000 years ago, along with domesticated animals when we really ramped up meat production. But our fundamental biology, and for example, the fact that we lost the ability to make vitamin C. We actually have the gene to make vitamin C, but our bodies junked it just because we're eating so much vitamin C. We, fruit bats, guinea pigs, these, exceedingly herbivorous species, why waste energy making vitamin C when all we're eating is leaves and fruit all day? That speaks a little bit to our the fact that we evolved flooding our system with phytonutrients all day, probably over 100 grams of fiber, maybe 10,000 milligrams of potassium. I mean, these are extraordinarily plant-based diets. And no wonder that fundamental diet is the only diet that's been proven to prevent, arrest, and reverse many of our leading killer diseases. So maybe we should go back to our roots indeed.
That sounds wonderful. Still a bit of more questions about including of animal products in our diet. So there was a question if a plant-based diet still has some disadvantages in comparison with the animal diet in terms of achieve balanced hormones in the body. And then what foods are important to incorporate to have balanced hormones?
The question is implying there's some benefit to adding animal products in terms of hormones. That's not something, I'm not sure what hormone they're talking about. But I don't know. So for example, thyroid function, the population with the best euthyroid, meaning the best functioning thyroid, lowest rates of hypothyroidism, for example, is the Seventh-day Adventist vegetarian, significantly lower rates than those that include meat in their diet. I'm not sure what the hormones they're talking about that would somehow be better on adding animal products.
Then I cannot really add anything to in terms of hormones. But the next question also has something to do with their autoimmune conditions actually now. And then the question is that many people with autoimmune conditions are recommended to eat a grain-free, low-starch, no nuts and seeds and plenty of animal proteins, but no dairy. And then some people actually see benefits of these diets. And then so the question is, wouldn't a vegan or plant-based diet would be actually optimal in case of the autoimmune diseases to prevent the disease as well? Or there are, again, maybe some conditions that might benefit from animal protein, animal products, or dairy products?
Autoimmune diseases are inflammatory diseases, and so it's no wonder that an anti-inflammatory diet is helpful. And there's only one diet ever shown to best treat multiple sclerosis, which is an autoimmune disease. That's a plant-based diet, the Swank diet. Single best diet ever proven for Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, two autoimmune diseases, is a plant-based diet, which is, it's an anti-inflammatory diet. We can kind of go down the list. Now the people that feel better cutting out grains, for example, maybe they had celiac disease. That's an autoimmune disease to this triggered by a protein in wheat, barley, rye called gluten. Affects maybe 1 in 150 people, 1 in 100 people. And so for those people, cutting out gluten, absolutely critically important. But no reason anyone else should be cutting down, because that would exclude these really healthy foods from your diet.
Thank you. Another question regarding the animal products is actually, what is your take on bone broth to heal the gut? The many experts recommend this to heal leaky gut. And then what the second question to this would be, what are the best thing a person can do to heal the gut on your own?
So I did a webinar recently on leaky gut and talked about, and so people can definitely check it out if they're interested in all the intricacies. When you say, experts say this, there's only one place to get information about medicine, about biology, and that's the peer-reviewed medical literature. So there's only one body of science. How else can we make decisions as life and death important as to what to feed ourselves and our families than but by the best available balance of evidence? Where do we get it from? The peer-reviewed literature. None of us were born with this information. We got it from somewhere. There's no study on the planet showing any benefits to leaky gut to bone broth. It doesn't mean it doesn't help, but there's just no science to support it. What we do have science to support is butyrate, the short chain fatty acids, which are good gut flora make in reaction to as a byproduct of prebiotic consumption, fiber consumption, resistant starch consumption. You want to heal a leaky gut, decrease the intestinal permeability. You eat high fiber foods. That's what the science shows.
Thank you. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful message. Going next, there was a question that is there any research to show that animal or dairy products would have their effects to like our new gene effect? So to cause, for instance, any aneuploidy changes in the gametes.
I'm sorry, say that again. And what kind of effects?
So then it would change the DNA. It would be able to cause DNA mutations or DNA like to break the chromosomes in the pregnant women or before pregnancy.
I mean, yeah, I mean, so I have a lot of videos talking about DNA damage. Typically single-stranded DNA breaks. You can do these so-called ex vivo studies where you put people on different diets and then take their blood cells, put them in a petri dish and see and just look at their DNA either before or after exposing them to some kind of stress, and to see what's a better diet. And then there's actually foods that actually involve in boosting our DNA repair enzymes to actually repair some of those single-stranded breaks. In general, we're talking about foods high in antioxidants because the leading cause of DNA damage and mutations are oxidative stress, these free radicals. And so we need to eat antioxidant-rich foods, which are particularly berries and greens. Those are one of the reasons why those two foods, berries and greens, are part of my daily dozen checklist of all my recommended foods to eat on a routine basis.
Yes, thank you. The next question, moving a little bit from the animal products, but to the current issues that we're experiencing, it's pandemic. And then the question is, what is your take on eating plant-based diet during this pandemic? And was there any research about the people who had extreme COVID symptoms and whether the vegan diet was actually beneficial for them? And the last one is that, what are your thoughts on the vaccine?
Yeah, so the only science we have, there was one study, a case control study that suggested that people are eating plant-based only as third as likely to suffer severe symptoms from COVID. They were not less likely to get the disease, but if they did get the disease, then they were much less likely to suffer problems, presumably because of lower comorbidities. So if you look at the diseases that increase one's risk of a severe course of COVID-19, we're talking about high blood pressure and heart disease, obesity, diabetes, all of which can be prevented, arrested, reversed with a healthy enough plant-based diet. And so no wonder. In fact, you don't even have to be obese. Just being overweight makes you much more likely. And so, so for these, so I mean, it should come as no surprise that there's a lot of severe infection. Of course, you don't want to get infected at all. And to do that, it's not a dietary approach, it's simple public health, which is not being in confined, crowded spaces with people and making sure that you are fully vaccinated.
One of the questions that came up was around the family life and raising a child. What would you say would be key things to look out for when raising a young child?
Oh, well, I mean, we look around, there's now this childhood obesity epidemic. It's particularly important to start out life on a healthy diet. And so there's a great new book out called Nourish, co-authored by Brenda Davis, my favorite dietitian on the planet, talks about raising plant-based children. And so I would encourage getting a book like that. There's also a book, other good resources by Reed Mengels called Vegan Pregnancy, I believe. Another excellent resource. And yeah, I mean, there's even, there's even a famous randomized controlled trial, forget which country. It was a country in Europe where they randomized, it's called it must have been in Finland, because it's called the Turku trial, where they randomized kids at birth to a low saturated fat diet and then followed them for like 20 years and saw significantly better results, suggesting indeed the diet plays a role in child and adolescent health.
Amazing, thank you. And the second question that came up was a little bit to do around the raw food diet. So in general, how does that compare to, say, a plant-based diet? Benefits, negatives, anything to consider?
I encourage people to eat a combination of raw and cooked plant foods. The benefits that raw foodists get is by cutting out processed junk primarily. And in fact, raw foodists may do better in that regard than people just switching to, a vegan diet. If you're just switching from, omnivorous junk food to plant-based junk food, you're not doing your body as much favors compared to raw foodists who, even if they have some, I don't know, raw meat, I don't even know if raw foodists eat some raw meat, having some raw meat in their diet, as long as they're cutting out all this processed junk, they might actually have better outcomes. But the problem is there's some nutrients that are actually absorbed better from cooked foods. So for example, carotenoids like beta carotene, you get more beta carotene from cooked carrots in your bloodstream than eating the same amount of raw carrots. Same thing with lycopene, the red pigment in tomatoes. You get more absorbed in your system when you eat processed tomato products, cooked tomato products like tomato paste, tomato sauce, than you do eating raw tomatoes. Some nutrients are partially destroyed by cooking, such as folate, vitamin C, and so I encourage people to eat a combination. The only food cooking technique I would stay away from is deep frying, which is, regardless of what you're deep frying, not a good idea.
Thank you. Regarding the spreading the vegan message, from your experience, what has been the best pieces of information, facts, or arguments which actually help you to win people over?
There's lots of non-dietary, the non-kind of nutrition arguments, of which I am no expert. But in terms of kind of nutrition, I can encourage people to check out the True Health Initiative. So this is a kind of like the IPCC of nutrition, where hundreds of the top nutrition scientists in the world got together to agree on a consensus statement as to what the healthiest human diet is. And so you can find out at truehealthinitiative.org, and it's a diet centered around whole plant foods, not surprisingly. It's the only diet shown to reverse the progression of the #1 cause of death in the industrialized world, heart disease, until another diet has been shown to do that. Well, then, the default diet, until proven otherwise, should be a plant-based diet. Those are probably the strong, and, reversing type 2 diabetes and high blood pressure. It's only one diet that's been shown to do all this. And so until we know more, that we got to go with the science.
Thank you. The next question is actually about intermittent fasting. I know that you have a series of videos regarding this topic, but if you maybe quickly can sum up for the audience, what's your opinion on that? What window would you recommend if yes? And then in what time period do you think it's beneficial to eat?
Yeah, so that's actually the largest chapter of my book, How Not to Diet, just because there's so many different types. There's alternate day fasting, 25/5, 5/2 fasting, time restricted feeding. Bottom line is the best evidence we have is early time restricted feeding. So restricting your feeding window to 12 hours or less, but importantly shifted towards the morning, not the evening. If you're going to skip any meal, you skip supper, not breakfast. We should try to, in general, shift our caloric intake earlier in the day, and not eat after 7 p.m., not eat after sundown.
Thank you so much. That was great.
The next question was, there was a specific one around eating vitamin C, and that there's a push for animal-based collagen to improve skincare. And maybe just a general concept, which you talked about in your video. There's this constant debate around you should be eating meat, but not eating meat. So how do we kind of stay true to ourselves?
The first part of that, did you say vitamin C?
Vitamin C, yep, and that there's a push for animal-based collagen.
Okay, so really the only vitamin C is widely distributed through the plant kingdom, almost exclusively. And so if you want vitamin C, you eat vitamin C rich foods, which is, citrus and tropical fruits and broccoli, bell peppers. In terms of collagen, you make all the collagen you want from the protein you eat. Collagen, there's no reason to eat collagen, which would be like gelatin. In fact, it's the only incomplete protein really in the food supply. All plant proteins are complete proteins having all essential amino acids. However, collagen is missing one of them. So it's the only protein where you'd actually die if that's all you ate. So you literally die of protein deficiency. But your body makes all the collagen you need. There's no reason you need to eat collagen. In fact, your body would just take the collagen, break it down to amino acids, make new collagen. Why not just do that with any other amino acid source? It doesn't make any sense unless you're selling people collagen, in which case it makes all the sense in the world. And then what's the third part? What was the third question?
Just well, we love your website, nutritionfacts.org. It's fantastic. How do we keep supporting the movement? How do we keep kind of spreading the message and fighting back this powerful marketing machine?
Oh, well, I think social support is critically important. So what you are doing, I'm so excited that you exist. I wish I was there in person to support you. And I think, it can be kind of isolating in this world, particularly since so much social things happen around food, to, feel like you're kind of the only one doing this. And so having that social support, even, online, is, I think, critically important. So, that's one way we can do it. And we can just spread we can just encourage people to check out the science. We have, science on our side. And so it's just a matter of saying, look, check it out, and see if you are not convinced.
But that's exactly where you come in, right? Because you created this amazing platform because not everybody can read PubMed, right? And then it's so important to really convey this message from the science to people. And especially when there are so many publications coming, then butter is good and then butter is not good anymore. Then people are confused and then they just eat butter or what they used to eat.
Yeah, so nutritionfacts.org, the reason that I'm so happy with what we did is because we show all the sources. We give links to all the sources. Make sure we didn't take anything out of context. It's like, here's the science. And now if someone disagrees, I thinks there's different science, it's quite possible I missed something. I'd love to see it. Put up a video, email me, whatever. We all I care about is the best available balanced evidence is out there. And we're not, kind of, shifting the message to fit some kind of preconceived notion, but just kind of laying it all out there.
And then another question regarding the science, what would be your opinion? How can we improve nutritional research? Because like observational studies, it's a bit difficult and there are too many co-founders and maybe food questionnaires also not the best way to assess the food. Then what would you, and clinical trials, of course, the best one, but then how can you do the clinical trials asking people to eat spinach or broccoli or something? What would you suggest?
Well, in a certain sense, we don't need any more information. Based right now with what we have decades of consensus in terms of the core tenets of healthy eating and healthy living. It's like saying, what other research, there's never been a randomized controlled trial of smoking to see whether smoking really causes lung cancer. All we have are these observational studies where we ask people how much you smoke, and then we kind of follow diseases. But there's confounders. People that smoke may also drink alcohol and not wear seatbelts, and there's all sorts of things. But we can build a body of evidence that suggests, it really does seem to be consistent. There's enough evidence that smoking really does cause lung cancer that we can make a public health proclamation, encourage people to get away from it, even though we don't have randomized controlled trials. And you say, what's my recommendation for future tobacco trials? There is none, because I think we have enough data that we don't need to do any more research. Now in terms of diet, there's always, little things around the edges that would be interesting. But I mean, the core, the basics, like fruits and vegetables are good for you, right? That's probably the most uncontroversial statement in all of nutritional science, right? And so it's like, okay, well, what more studies we're going to do? Okay, well, wait a second. Is everybody eating lots of fruits and vegetables every day? I mean, because if not, like, what's the point of even doing research if you're not going to, now, once everybody's eating their fruits and vegetables, once everyone's eating healthier food, okay, well, then it's like, all right, well, now that everyone's on the right, on the same track, okay, well, let's do that last 10%, right? Now that we're 90% there, getting rid of processed junk, eating lots of whole foods, okay, then okay, yeah, let's tweak. I mean, is black tea better than green tea? Is okay, well, we can figure some little, but let's we really know quite a bit. But in terms of what I'd like to see in the research is disease reversal trials. I think that's most exciting. So, for example, Dr. Dean Ornish right now is pitting his plant-based diet against Alzheimer's disease to see if we can reverse the course of Alzheimer's disease. Amazing. He's already shown you can reverse the progression of heart disease, reverse the progression of early stage prostate cancer. So now he's trying with Alzheimer's. Why is that so important? Because, well, of course, not only is it Alzheimer's a leading killer now around the industrialized world, but it would just, bring much attention to be like, wait a second, what diet is there that can so effectively arrest heart disease, Alzheimer's, and cancer? And in hopes that people will do it. And, in trying to prevent Alzheimer's, they'll also prevent their diabetes and also prevent their high blood pressure. There's just so many kind of, side benefits, whatever you're in it for. We want people to be healthy.
That's very true. Again, in terms of the science, a quick question. So while doing systematic review and looking at the diet and the onset of menopause, actually, we found that vegetarian diet was associated with the early menopause. Of course, the evidence is a bit flaky, right? Like some people see one thing or another, but that's what the association that we found. Can you comment?
That's actually that's on my list for my new book, How Not to Age, to see if there are dietary factors associated with early menopause. And so that's so I will look at the same literature you're looking at and see what I find. I'm excited.
Thank you.
Thank you. One specific question was, what is your view on biophosphates, which is often recommended against osteoporosis?
Yeah. Yeah, but it's fine. That will be in my preserving your skeleton chapter in How Not to Age. I'll be looking at all the osteoporosis drugs. It's something I haven't had any videos, and now there's a whole new this group of supposed osteoporosis fighting drugs, and eager to see what the risks and benefits are. Stay tuned.
We look forward to your book and to that research. Thank you. The second question I had was, very often we hear these comments like, oh, when I moved from a vegan cod liver oil to an animal-based, I felt better. When I moved from a vegan iron to an animal-based iron, I felt better. Is this just out of context? Is there something else going on here? Just maybe your general thoughts on this.
You mean like a supplement, or they shifted eating patterns?
Both. We hear that a lot. Oh, yeah.
Well, I mean, so there's a number of potential things that could be going on. So, for example, I mean, some people have food allergies or intolerances to certain foods. So, let's say you had a soy intolerance your whole life, and you had never even knew it because you've never eaten tofu or tempeh or anything. All of a sudden, you start eating plant-based, and you feel terrible. And it's because all of a sudden you switch to soy foods and they just don't agree with you. And so you think, boy, and then you go back, you start eating your soy burgers and you go to eating regular burgers, you feel so much better, and you attribute it to how wonderful beef is, but no, you just happen to be about 1 in 200 people that have a soy insensitivity. So it could be something like that. It could be psychological. I mean, you just, kind of this wishful thinking bias, which you see a lot in like the, alcohol literature, where people just really want to make a glass of wine every day look good, but it's just like, oh, look, that's not what the science shows, but you can try to, manipulate it. Or I mean, maybe someone really is deficient in something. So if you were a long-term vegan, you were B12 deficient, and all of a sudden you ate a burger, you would feel better, because if you hadn't been taking supplements or eating B12 fortified foods, that you would feel better because you'd get a source of that critical nutrient.
Brilliant. And just before we wrap up, is there anything that we finished with the questions? So is there anything maybe you think we should have asked, or something important to take away from this conversation? And
I just want to leave with the good news that we have tremendous power over our health, destiny, and longevity. The vast majority of premature death and disability is preventable with a plant-based diet and otherwise healthy lifestyle. And sorry I couldn't be there in person. Maybe in 2023, after the new book comes out in December 2022, I'll get back to Europe and see everyone in person.
That sounds wonderful. We're looking forward to it. It was quite disappointed last time when you couldn't come.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for what you're doing for your work. We are huge fans, and we'll keep working on it to convert more people. And then thank you and all the best.
Keep up the good work yourself.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.